And now we're live. We're going to get started real soon. It's 59, so we'll give people a chance to join in. Until then, Katrina, any exciting Christmas plans?
No, I have a very quiet Christmas. It's really handy that my family is all in Australia. So I get away with it quite easily every year.
So you get to just enjoy hot cocoa and a book in peace and quiet.
Yes. Cup of
That
dog
sounds
walk.
amazing.
I know. Don't have to be around anyone I don't like. It's awesome. I'm not meant to admit to that, am I?
No, I think that sounds lovely. With two small kids, Christmas is intense.
Yeah, but also joyful. They would love
Lovely.
it.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, but it's not hot cocoa and a book in a
Yeah.
sofa without someone climbing on me.
Yeah.
So it's just different.
Very different. Well, the dog does climb on me, to be fair, when he wants to walk.
Keeps you warm.
It does. For sure.
That's fantastic. Okay, it is 1:00. We have people live with us. Some will drop in and some will listen on the recording. So I actually vote we get started.
Absolutely.
So hi, everyone, and welcome to How We Hire. Before we get started, for those of you who are joining in live, please use the chat functionality to ask questions, comment on the conversation. I will try to incorporate the questions as we go along. And for those of you who listen to the recording, you're just as welcome. If you want to have the chance to ask questions, join us live next time. My name is Linnea. I am a licensed psychologist and the COO here at Alva. And Alva Labs is a candidate assessment platform working to revolutionize the world of hiring. And today we have a very interesting guest here on How We Hire, Katrina Collier.
Hello.
Hi. You have 2 decades of experience in recruitment and talent acquisition.
I started young.
You started really young. You're known for your direct approach to fixing what's broken in hiring. Author of best-selling book Reboot Hiring, and does a lot of workshops, mentoring, public speaking around the globe. Welcome to How We Hire.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
So if we start a little bit with your background,
Sure.
if you were to describe what you do and why you do that, how would that description sound like?
I basically wish to fix the bits of the recruitment process that are broken due to human connection. We're very busy throwing technology at problems that it's not going to fix because it's actually a relationship problem, a connection problem. So I, these days, spend most of my time focused on fixing the relationship between the recruiter, whether that's external or internal, and the manager who's hiring for the role. So to me, that's where it's broken. And I don't believe technology can fix it, much as there's a lot of tech vendors out there who think that they can. We'll agree to disagree. But it started from really just wanting to make recruitment better, just wanting to remind recruiters that we deal with human beings and that they matter. So, be it the Robot Proof Recruiter or Reboot Hiring, both of those books are very much around that. But to me, it's we're humans recruiting humans for other humans, and that's where it tends to go a bit wrong. So that's what I'm about. I want the people who are going through the hiring process to have the best experience they can have, and if we fix that relationship, I believe it will fix that part.
That's super interesting. And I mean, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. How did you end up here?
Well, I fell into recruitment, of course, because pretty well 2 people I've met in 20 years have chosen it. So when I moved to London from Sydney, in case anyone's wondering, it is an Australian accent. I saw an advertisement in a newspaper, believe it or not, for a recruitment consultant, like a trainee recruitment consultant. I thought, oh, I can do that. Why not? And so I did. That's what I did. I did agency recruitment, and then I went in-house for a while. I had then been a trainer and speaker, and then Kogan Page came to me and asked me if I'd like to write a book. So I ended up writing this. And this came about, like my notoriety came about from early Twitter. like lots of tweeting and blogging and speaking. So this came out in the purple color in 2019, and then this is the second edition that came out in 2022. And then when that came out, I was like, I want to do something else. And that's when I started doing design thinking workshops, which I think is how we met Linnea via Steve Usher, who obviously I've run workshops with as well. And then coming into this year, 2024, I was like, I want to write a book for the other side. So it was really from all the experience I've seen of how talent acquisition's been treated through the 2020s. I was like, I need to write a book for managers themselves. And that's what Reboot Hiring is. Bright yellow. I'm not quite sure how bright the next book color is going to be, but we're just gradually getting brighter. But this one, again, is still aiming to help the people going through the hiring process, but it really explains to managers and leaders why the relationship they have with their recruiter matters so much, and to make it more respectful and balanced, and how much time they can save and money they can save if they get the beginning part of the process right, which just seems to be so overlooked. So it's just sort of been an evolution over the last 2 decades from each role and then I obviously started my own business in the middle of that. And here we are.
Here we are.
And here we are. I mean, I didn't expect to be traveling the globe and all those sorts of things, or writing books even. But it's just been a really interesting career.
That's fantastic. And if we then double click on like your view of talent acquisition, how it's evolving in today's business environment, especially, I mean, you talk about like technology, AI, there's a pressure to like reduce cost, increase efficiency. If you just think out loud a little bit about where recruitment is at today.
Oh boy. I mean, so if I talk, when I say talent acquisition, I'm meaning recruiters who work inside a company. So I'm specifically going to be talking about talent acquisition as a function. So at the end of, say, 2019, I would say that it was coming into its own form. It is a new function in its current guise, as far as being able to find people on the internet and be able to directly contact them and hire them without having to use an agency, without having to advertise, for example. It was coming into its own. And then obviously the world went to, you told me not to swear, didn't you? It's it starts with an S, ends with a T, has a HI in the middle, in 2020 when the pandemic hit. And so we then went from, or through the 2020s, we've had recruiters fired because everyone downsized drastically because nobody knew what was going on. And then they were rehired for the overhiring of 2021, 2022. And I'm grossly generalizing. Of course, not every company did this. But then talent acquisition was thrown out again because suddenly we're overhired. Oh my goodness, off you go. We don't need you. And then they've sort of been rehired. But you mentioned cost cutting, and this is what I'm seeing in many organizations around the world, is that they are cost cutting in the talent acquisition function. They have rehired less experienced leaders into or people into leadership roles who can't necessarily protect the team. There's a lot of firefighting. They're underfunded, they're undervalued. So all of the headway that they'd made by the end of 2019 kind of has gone out the window. And there's this function. I mean, it is insane because they are the people who recruit the people for the company, but a lot of them are being set up to fail at the current time. Then you bring in the threat of technology. And it is really interesting because there's a few other loud voices in my space who will say things like, oh, AI isn't replacing jobs. It's like, well, actually, technology has already started replacing jobs, because if a team can run and use technology to be more efficient and therefore not increase headcount or possibly reduce headcount, that's somebody being replaced. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think people want to talk to a robot in an interview. I don't think they want to trust their career to AI. I don't think they even want to trust the application process to AI. So I still feel it needs human interaction, but there has been a reduction in the headcount inside talent acquisition. So you've got these teams who are being underfunded and undervalued and underrespected, firefighting, and also in a psychologically unsafe environment where, well, if I lose my job, I mightn't get another one. There are some exceptional directors of and heads of talent acquisition out of work, which blows my mind because they're exceptional. And everyone I know knows somebody who's like that, that's not got a job. And you're just going, how is that possible? They're such great leaders, but they're expensive and the companies want to save money. So, but it just seems so silly, because ultimately it is the people that decide the fate of the company. That's what I see going on. That was all very depressing, I appreciate. But that's, it wouldn't surprise me if we lost a lot more people out of the profession and that many burnt out, because that just seems to be, gosh, aren't you glad you got me on as a guest? How depressing in the middle of the week. But it's what I'm seeing, and it's like, this isn't the only function this is happening to.
No.
This will be happening to marketing and human resources and probably even sales. I mean, it will be happening just this whole do more with less. What, until we just, everyone's like on fire because they can't, like, it doesn't make sense to me.
And how come, in your opinion, is the talent acquisition department so undervalued? Why is it easy to cut there?
They do not understand. The leaders do not understand what it takes to hire somebody. Sometimes you've got leaders who haven't changed jobs in 5 to 10 years. So they haven't got a clue what people can see. So even if you are absolutely desperate for a job and you're going through the interview process and the company treats you badly, you can still say no, because you can download Uber or a taxi app onto your phone and start driving for that. You can start doing deliveries. You can start, we've got Uber Eats and all these kind of things here, and Deliveroo, and you don't have to work for a company. And I think the companies still think that they have all the power. And because they won't necessarily, I always talk about the recruitment alignment meeting, the meeting to discuss the role at the beginning of the process, because they often don't want to turn up for those, or they don't want to really listen to what the recruiter has to say. They don't understand the value. They don't understand what it takes. And that their behavior, their poor behavior, ends up out on the internet, deterring who knows how many people as well. I mean, I'm sure you saw that publicity stunt that went down this week out of India. It went all around, which did seem a little bit like a witch hunt. It did seem very strange. So I'm not surprised it was apparently a publicity stunt. But everyone is going to remember that company for all the wrong reasons, because very few people will have seen, actually, no, we did it apparently on purpose for mental health. And you're kind of going, people remember, like, oh gosh, don't work there. People aren't treated well. Don't work there. I had a bad hiring experience. Don't buy their services. I had a bad hiring experiences. But for some reason, and it's probably because many leaders just have not been through a hiring cycle. So they don't know what it feels like. And I'm regularly saying to recruiters, I want you to show them. Go and open your laptop in front of them, or do it online, share a screen. Show them how to search for a job. Show them what's available. Show them the review sites. Show them, Blind app for anyone recruiting technology people. Show them recruiting hell on Reddit, and how visible all of the information is and how much it matters. And then that would start some of the, okay, right. I need to take this seriously.
Okay, so there's something about the hiring managers not being a candidate themselves, not seeing the work of the talent acquisition manager or the recruiter, and therefore treating it like something that's very easy, that I have all the power.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. I think the other part, though, is also here in the UK, for example, it's something like 82% of managers are accidental managers. So they were great, they promoted them, and they've not had any leadership training. Scary. Then you go, hey, and now you need to hire someone for your team. And they're going, what? I don't know what I'm doing. Or someone leaves from their team and they automatically go and pull out the old job description. They don't think, well, actually, hang on. Linnea learned all this stuff in the last couple of years. What do we really need going forward? Because they don't know what they're doing. And they don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, because they think that they should demonstrate that they do know what they're doing. So then that's where they might feel a little threatened to have a partnership with the recruiter and have that conversation, because they might be thinking, oh God, I'm going to get found out. Apparently there's a lot of that goes on as well, which just, again, seems daft. If you're a manager that's on this call, just be vulnerable and say to your recruiter, I don't know, help me articulate who I need to hire. Help me work out who I really need, because I want to save time and money and hassle down the line.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think it's interesting how, as a manager, you're automatically, or you're expected to know how to build a team, lead a team, and to your point, like hire that team. But it's hard. I mean, that's why it's a profession.
I know. And that's why I've never had a team. I'm like, I don't want to know. No. Everyone's like, you don't want to grow? No. I don't have the patience for it, for starters, but I wouldn't know what I was doing. And there would be this whole, but how can you be your age and not know how to lead a team? Well, I have no idea. Like I don't want to be fair.
Yeah. But then, okay, so then what we can say is like recruitment has been, a lot has happened over the last year. There's been back and forth. It's to some degree then undervalued internally for a bunch of different reasons, probably. How can then, if I'm a recruiter listening into this conversation, how can I, prove my strategic value?
Yep. You have to start speaking their speak. That's a huge part of it. When I've attempted in Reboot Hiring, I mean, I personally think Christmas is coming. You could pop this on their desks as a Christmas stocking filler. When I wrote this, I wrote it in business speak, attempting to take everything I've heard from talent acquisition and kind of translate it. So you don't want to say to them, oh, recruitment's hard, or oh, you're ruining our employer brand, or oh, the candidate experience is bad. They don't care. Like, they don't understand what that means. But when you're saying to them, if you were to spend an hour with me at the beginning of the process, you would save 80 hours of time interviewing unsuitable people down the line, or your project wouldn't fail because we'd definitely hire the right people, or you wouldn't waste money, and these sorts of things. It's really explaining to them in quite simple terms, but business impact terms, what happens when they don't partner with you properly. So some of it's a case of, if you're a recruiter and you get a new job requirement in, you do not work on that role unless you have the meeting. So if they won't give you the meeting, you ask for it a couple of times, they don't give it, with permission from your boss, please don't get fired on my account, I would suggest closing it on the system. That will soon get their attention if they are genuinely recruiting that role. And then you're like, look, I'm here to help you save time, money, and hassle. The only way I can do that is for us to have a proper discussion about this role. Look, I just want to save you time. I want to make sure that we get the right person. I want to protect your reputation. So it's like switching it all about them, but in words they understand. Because they can't, yes, employer brand is extremely important for future hiring. We get that, but they don't get that. They don't get how their behavior impacts the hiring process. And obviously, you also know that there's much more to it in that meeting than just discussing the role. There's also, setting the timelines, the contingency plans, like what happens if you're not available, what happens if you have to cancel, who's going to deal with that, and agreeing feedback and why that matters and all these kinds of things. So there's some of that, but I think a lot of it is we must speak in ways they understand. And that is, productivity, time, money. We have to speak that way. And we tend to speak in our slang. There's a lot of, candidate experience terminology and, applicants, blah, blah. They don't get it. They don't understand it.
Because there are those pitfalls that, are KPIs or just lingo that's like really close to heart if you work as a recruiter. I mean, you mentioned candidate experience, you mentioned employer brand. Are there more common
there are loads of them. Yeah, I mean, we use loads of words. I mean, we use candidate for everything from prospect right through to a new hire, which is crazy. And then for some reason, the meeting with the manager has too many names. It's like, could we not do? Yeah. But even things like, time to hire is really important. Time to hire to me is the most ridiculous matrix on the planet. Somebody has a 3-month notice period, is going to screw up your time to hire. It should be like time that it took the manager to open the CV and give you some feedback. That to me is much more important. But it's just, we just have this tendency to use our words. I mean, I can't think of them all at this precise moment, but any recruiter listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. We have a lingo.
Exactly. The lingo that kind of focus on what we are going to do and the funnel of the process,
Yeah.
like that's more problematic than the problem that we're solving together, meaning finding the right person that can do the job and actually reach the target we have as an organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is, I mean, I always go back to this meeting. It's like, because it is the beginning of the process. That's, in my humble opinion, is what's broken.
But let's go into that. Okay, so first, what's broken with it and how do we fix it?
What's broken is a human, like a communication and a collaboration problem. That's all it is. Before anyone says, but tech can fix that, I would ask you how many messages are read and not replied to on your phone at this precise moment. We all have at least 10. Like, we looked at and gone, oh God, I must get back to that. We have technology that allows us to communicate and collaborate within reach pretty well at all times. And we don't, because life gets in the way. We get busy, that kind of a thing. So technology isn't going to fix it. It's a behavioral problem. They need to understand why it's important and why it matters that we're going to partner. And I think what happens is, particularly now where I'm seeing a lot of teams who have quite inexperienced leaders who therefore really can't develop their team, but they can't protect their team. So their team is overloaded with so many requirements that they don't have time to learn and they don't have time to improve. So we're now in the chicken and the egg. It's like, we need this to happen. We need them to push back and stand up for themselves. But if they feel vulnerable and not protected, they won't. But it has to be that no matter what the manager's job title is, even if they're the vice president of whatever, and you're a 2-year recruiter, you should still feel like, hey, I'm here to partner with you to fill this role. This isn't you're just giving me an order and I'm going, sure. Because if you get an order from them, we've all seen it, right? There's like 10 must-haves. They must have this and this and this and this. And you go out to market and you can't find anybody. And then what happens is the recruiter starts feeling like they've got a problem, that they're inept at what they do because they can't find somebody. No, the manager's being unrealistic. They're not partnering with you. They're not listening to you when you're saying this person doesn't exist. And the way that you can fix that is, one, you will not work on a role without a meeting. Like it's literally, it should just be law. I've decided, recruitment law, you will not work on that role unless you have a proper meeting. Look, hey, if it's the same role and you get it all the time, of course it's different. But if it's a new role and you really don't know, you look at it and you go, I don't know what this is. I don't understand this. And how can you? Because you don't do the job. It's like, have the meeting. And then you start the meeting. Now, in both books, I have Steve Levy's amazing question, which I just think you should just start the meeting with this question. How will you know at the end of 12 months you've hired the right person? So you don't go, I'm going to pull out the job description and we're going to go through it and take a look. You go, how will you know at the end of 12 months you've hired the right person? And they'll go, right? And you've got them. If you get them thinking, you've got their respect. They're suddenly going, well, actually, they'll have delivered this project and they'll have done oh gosh, and make sure they're client facing because the last person wasn't client facing and burned as a client. And they'll list off soft skills. They will list off things that are not on the job description that they've used to get approval for the role. The other thing Catherine Robinson does, she takes in profiles based off the job description and shows them to the manager. And that's how she opens her intakes or recruitment alignment meetings or whatever you want to call it. And the manager will usually go, oh, they're not right. Oh, well, hang on a minute. They match the job description. Okay, so how will we know at the end of 12 months? What problems are they coming in to solve? What keeps you up at night? So you're getting them to look forward as to what is going to be delivered in the future that this person is going to do. Then you've got them. The second you've got them thinking, you've got them. And then it's a case of, okay, agreeing all your deliverables and like, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this and together we're going to fill this role. And it's quite an attitude shift. It's not well, you're going to go away and just magic up this person. It's like, no, I'm going to find you some profiles and have some initial conversations and start the sell. Then you are going to have a look at their profiles and you're going to decide quickly because it's going to cost the company otherwise. And then we're going to have interviews and off you go. So, but it's it's almost like making it like a project, like a little project that you're doing, so that you've got a different attitude. And I think the really interesting thing as well is we call them hiring managers. They're not. They're managers that are hiring for a role that they might hire for a couple of times a year. They mostly don't know what they're doing. They don't know what's involved. But you're the one driving, as the recruiter, driving the hiring process. So actually, we should just call them managers, because they're not managing the hiring process. You as the recruiter are. Your job is to push them along. So that's part of it. And I think the biggest thing that isn't done enough, because it scares a lot of recruiters, is you have to find out what is painful about this role being open, because that's the thing that will allow you to drive it forward. So what's the cost to the bottom line while this role is open? What promotion is on the line? Is there a bonus that you won't get if we don't fill this? What about a client project? Like, what is it that keeps them up at night about this role that's stressing them? Because once you know that, then you repeat it to them at the end of the meeting, right? So as we agreed, like, we know that you've got a promotion on the line with this role. So it's really important that you give me feedback on the CVs really quickly. And then when you send a summary of the meeting with who's agreed to do what, you just reiterate again, I understand that, you've got a promotion on the line, so let's be quick with this. And you can just keep using that when they don't come back on feedback, when they said they will, or when they don't, right after the interview, give you information, whatever it is. You can say, hey, you told me you got a promotion on the line here. I'm just trying to help you here. And you reiterate the pain point. But I don't feel like recruiters are trained enough to dig and get that, or they're a bit scared of it. Like, it's the vice president of the vice president. I can't possibly ask them what's on the line. It's like, yes, you can. What happens to the business if we don't fill this role?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, recruiters won't ask that question because they think it shows that they're flawed, that they're doing something wrong. It's like, no, you've just got the role. You've got to know once you know. Because also, I mean, I was talking to a recruiter yesterday. This role has been open at this company for 3 years. And I went, oh, for God's sake, just close the role. And she went, I can't. Yes, I said, yes, you can. That manager doesn't want it. There's no pain. They don't care. They're not going to fill it. Just shut it.
So, like, using this, again, many named meeting, but initial meeting where you kind of align on the expectation to get the hiring manager to look ahead, the 12-month magic question, that will get them to talk about the soft skills and like dare to look away from just the long list of requirements that are hard skills. That's not necessarily what they're looking for.
It won't be what they're looking for.
And then finding the pain for them, like, why is it a problem to that this role is open? I think that's
the pain is the pain's your little needler.
Exactly.
Like, oh, sorry, my dog has just decided to join in.
Maybe we will get some insights there.
I think it's because you said earlier at the beginning about him jumping on me.
So if then, how can an organization like dramatically change these type of meetings? Like, is it this is the agenda that we're going to go through? Is it just to like pump up in the mirror before? Like, how do you do it?
There's lots of things you can do. As a psychologist, I'm not sure you'll believe this one. I'm a big believer in Amy Cuddy's power pose, though. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I love it. So if you're all nervous, just spend 5 minutes with your hands on your hips before you go into a meeting. Sorry, my dog is being so loud all of a sudden. So yeah, I mean, from you as a recruiter going into a meeting with someone who perhaps intimidates you, honestly, I think that works a treat. But I would say it's about the leaders. And I think it needs to be leaders protecting their team. So talent acquisition, protecting their team, and being clear to the C-suite. Look, sorry, he's distracting me so much. He's not so springy anymore, and I'm a bit scared he's going to try and jump up on the table and miss. I'm trying to get him to sit down. So I think this psychological safety thing needs to be addressed, because you almost should be upsetting your managers. Like, you're wanting to do such a great job that, hello, welcome to my dog. It's so funny because he's just been sound asleep all day. And now it's like,
Gotta
oh,
join in.
come and join in the mess.
It's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, he's just joining in. So it's a case of you want to rattle the cage. You want to get the managers to really think about who they need to hire. And that means you're challenging them. You're not challenging them in an aggressive way. You're not going, no, tell me who you really need. Like, you're like, okay, I want to ask you some gentle what questions, you know, and just get them looking and guide them and cajole them and show them, look, I know you want all of those must-haves, but let's run a quick search. Look, oh, what are we going to do? There's nobody out there with those skills. So you need to have the confidence to do that. But if your leadership doesn't give you that confidence, then I want you to speak to them. I want you to speak to your TA leader. And you say to them, I'm here to save the business time, money, and hassle. I'm here to increase productivity. I am here to attract the best people into this organization. And if I don't feel safe to push back and get the best job description I can from the manager so that I know that I'm going to market and I'm not messing us around and I'm not ruining our reputation, if I don't feel like I can do that, it makes it very challenging for me to speak to candidates and applicants and attract them in. That leader should be speaking to the C-suite and say, this is a non-negotiable. Because it's just a case of saying, like, taking the salary of the manager and dividing it up and going, that's the hourly rate of that manager. They've wasted 60 hours interviewing unsuitable people. That costs the company this. Do you think they could just be told to be more respectful? Could we put it as part of their performance management that they must partner properly with talent acquisition? We're here to help them fill roles with the right people to ensure the success of the company. But it's all that confident speaking that, unfortunately, I'm not sure that members of TA feel they can do right now.
And on this note, because one thought that I have had several times, I think one way that a lot of companies try to solve for this or other challenges with the hiring managers is to have some sort of like manager training. This is how we run recruitment. This is how we do interviews. Is that a good way to address it? Is it a passive aggressive way to address it? Like, what's your thoughts on the training part?
I mean, passive aggressive would be buying them this for Christmas.
Okay.
I highly recommend doing that. I am answering your question in a really strange way. So I pitched, this is through a professional publisher, so it's through Wiley. When I pitched Wiley my book idea, I had to look at all of the competition books that are out there. And what I found was that they all talk about how to interview somebody, but not how to identify who you need to hire in the first place. So chicken and the egg again, really. It's like you need to be able to, I'm sorry, he's just going mental behind me. You need to know who you're going to hire. And therefore that takes time. So I wrote this going, right, why does it matter? What does talent acquisition do? Why does it matter? What's the problem if you don't get it right? All this kind of stuff, right? So it is a brilliant start. But then you can, of course, get people in to teach them how to articulate who they need to hire and how to interview and all that sort of stuff. I actually don't really cover interviewing in there because I feel like there's a ton of books, there's some up on my shelf above me, that cover interviewing. But it's getting them to understand the importance. And I think it's more that. I don't know. I mean, I would hope training could convince them that recruitment isn't an admin function. Anyone that's done it understands. It's different to sales. So, if I'm basically selling you this pen has no say in the process. So I say, guess what? You're going to Linnea, and it goes, okay. Whereas a human goes, I'm sorry, what? And they've got questions and they've got emotions and they've got loved ones to consider. And they've, in your case, you've got kids. In my case, I've got a dog. Like there's a lot to take into consideration before they'll change jobs. And that's why it's not an admin function. In fact, I call it an art form. I think really good recruiters understand the art, because we woo people. We attract, engage, and woo, and like coax them through to the company and across the line.
Yeah, exactly. It's selling two
Humans.
products to two different stakeholders, and they're going to like each other. And as you say, they're not products; it's humans, and the complexity is vast.
It sounds awful, but it is selling humans and matchmaking. Sounds wrong, but it is.
And I like your thoughts on, like, maybe it's the training could help, but to some degree maybe we're talking about and targeting the wrong things. We're talking about how you should behave when you're already in the process, when the first piece of the puzzle might be the one missing. Like, why are we doing this? Does it matter? Why is it important? So I think that's a good tip to take home, and just, are we addressing that? Do we talk about that internally?
Yeah. And I think you're right. And I think it's all of the, I call them micro actions. So it's all the little conversations. So for example, guess it was really interesting, because I was looking at the ROI of talent acquisition, and I was saying, I went to like all my best recruiters who I always call into my books. I'm like, so who are your star hires? And they went, huh? I'm going, the people that you've hired that have come into the company and have just done mind-blowing things. So they've saved the company millions, they've made the company millions, whatever it is, they've really excelled, they've delivered projects they thought were not deliverable, whatever. Who are they? Oh, like, how do you expect anybody to respect you if you don't know who your star hires are? Because what happens is you do your job, and Linnea starts at the company, and then you forget about what she then delivers. Whereas you need to know, as a recruiter, you need to know, so that when you're having that conversation, you can bring up. So you have a conversation with the finance director or the CFO, and they're like, oh, you guys, you're just a cost center. And you can go, well, let me tell you about the last 5 people I hired, and the productivity and the bottom line, and how that's been impacted by those 5 hires. And you start rattling them off. You don't give them permission. You just start speaking and you rattle off. Well, this one did this and this did, and they'll go, I'm sorry, how much budget did you say you needed for that technology? Like, you've got to shift into that business mindset. But that's a really quick way, is to just keep track of the people that you hire and know who the really impactful ones were.
I love this. I often talk a lot about how, the most important hiring KPI is like the quality of the hires that you make. But then the reality is often that, well, I have 50 more roles to fill. How on earth am I going to keep track of how they're doing? Any thoughts on how to successfully do that?
Well, I hope that they don't have that many roles, because it's actually not sustainable.
How many, what is realistic?
I mean, genuinely, if we're talking completely different roles, I think 10 to 12 max.
Yep.
If we're talking different roles, if we're talking 50 salespeople, fine, right? But if we're talking and it is absolutely ridiculous what I see some of the teams having to deal with. But, perhaps they're really easy roles where it, like in a lot of technical roles, right? They're all nuances of nuances of nuances. So you can't just, or even in sales roles, there's nuances of what industry. Whereas perhaps if you're in the healthcare sector, it's very clear, like a nurse on this band does this and this band does that. And so therefore it is easier to have a high volume. It does depend. But if they're all completely different and nuanced, I mean, maximum, because when you're not getting back to people, and because you're overloaded with the requirements, then that starts to impact the bottom line again. There is a cost for that poor candidate experience. So, but I think it's a case of making the time, I'm going to spend 30 minutes once a week just catching up with some of the people that I've hired, or having a wander around the business and seeing what's going on. It can be on your lunch break. Like, I'm going to wander around, chat to some of the teams while I'm eating my sandwich or whatever. But I think it's critical.
I really agree.
And it's often the people that aren't in the most senior roles as well. Strangely, they're always the ones that seem to come up with these amazing decisions that save millions. So, or impact or bring in millions. So, but it is worth doing. And obviously it will also help with retention. And then actually this is the other part of that if I had one dream of what I would like to see, I would like to see the overhiring and the overfiring stop.
Say more.
Well,
what do you mean?
Part of it is the whole way that the venture capital and the startup world works. I don't want to go into how it works, but that some of it is just, oh, you've got money, just hire. And it's like, oh my God, these are people's lives we're playing with. But some of it was obviously the BS of the pandemic. But it still happens, is rapid hiring. And then, so I would, in Reboot Hiring, I refer to Elizabeth Lemke. She gave us a great question, which is, again, in this meeting, right? If we were to have a 20 or 30% downturn, would we keep this role? Would we hire this role? Oh, actually, no, we wouldn't. Well, should we be hiring? Now that scares recruiters because they think their job is just to, okay, I've got to fill a role. Well, no, we are playing with people's lives. So there's that thought. And then there's, if you are out speaking to the business, you start knowing who's they're getting itchy feet. They've not got a promotion. So then you can go into that meeting and say, well, why don't we promote Linnea up and backfill? Like, what about this person over in this department? They've got those skills which would match this really well, and they're getting itchy. They're at that 2 to 3 year mark. Do you think maybe we should pull them over? Again, the second you start speaking like that, your manager's going to go, whoa, that Katrina, she knows her stuff. Because you're showing it, you're looking at things differently, not just a tick box on a page. So yeah, there's some of that. Not sure I answered your question. No. I want to stop because it's not talent acquisition's responsibility to do workforce planning, but when they start firing again, TA goes out first, not the workforce planners, or the CEO, to be fair, who's probably the one that should be fired for that.
Okay, so
it's a good job I don't have a boss, isn't it? Can say these comments.
Thankfully, that might have been a tough discussion after this.
Just got fired. Speaking the truth.
So if we start wrapping up, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things about how, the problem, but also a lot of the solutions or possible solutions is. So how do you envision, future recruitment? How will it evolve? How will it look like in a couple of years?
I mean, it's certainly going to involve like co-recruiting with technology. So, I mean, they call it co-piloting, aren't they? Why don't we just call it co-recruiting? So technology is coming, but what I want recruiters to do is get studying. And I appreciate that a lot of you are overloaded, but you need to know how viable this technology is. So, for example, there's I'm not an expert on this, but I know there's regulations coming into the EU around things like ChatGPT and bias. And so you need to know this. And you need to know, well, let's type in, like, show them on ChatGPT. I have not done this, but my understanding is when you type in, like, show me CEOs, it shows you a whole load of white men, for example, right? So it's like, what's the output? What's the truth? So when your leadership are coming to you saying, I want you to roll this out, you can go, let's just talk about whether this is the right thing to do for the recruitment for this company. This is because I've looked at this and seen this, and I've heard this about this, and you've gathered your evidence. You want to make sure, and I talk about this all the way through the Robot Proof Recruiter. It came out in 2022, so it doesn't really have ChatGPT in it. But I talk about, does the technology save you time, money, and hassle? Does it support the human experience? Does it make candidate experience better? Does it make the manager experience better? Because if it doesn't, that's not the technology. So it's a case of start researching, like what tools will make the process better and make it so that then I have more time to engage this with my curiosity, my critical thinking, my problem solving, getting proactive, starting to look forward, actual talent planning and talent mapping and things like that, which we'd love to do. So I think I'd love to see more critical thinking and curiosity.
And it sounds like as a recruiter, you need to be a competent buyer of services, products. I mean, the only way to be able to be that is to learn, investigate, try
it. Yeah. I mean, the breadth of technology that's out there is ridiculous. I need to look at the screenshot and check who it is. Glenn Lindley. There's a Glenn Lindley has just shared. He's actually just shared version 3 that shows the amount of HR tech that's out. It's insane. There's so much of it, and that's why it's important to try and to see how it is going to make the process better.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why are you getting it? Oh, someone said it's the latest buzzword. Well, and it's too important. We play with people's lives. So
let's end on that note. Do your homework. We're playing with people's lives.
Yeah, we are. And livelihoods.
Strong finish line. Katrina, thank you so much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure hearing all your thoughts and opinions. And I think at least I learned a lot. So hopefully the rest of the listeners did so as well. And thank you everyone for joining us, and hope to see you next time for our next episode of How We Hire. So until then, ta-ta.
Bye.
Bye.